Are you ready for a show that talks sports from the fans' point of view?
We've seen Michael Jordan score 37 points a game in his era. How many could he score in today's NBA?
There's not a player out there who I'd rather have than LeBron James.
Are you ready for a show that isn't afraid to challenge anyone when it comes to sports? If Adam Silver really wanted to fix tanking in the NBA, he would stop rewarding teams by giving them the best chance to win the draft lottery.
I mean, how many times will Roger Goodell drop the ball on handling domestic violence in the NFL?
Look, athletes have every right to talk politics, but if the fans stop tuning in, that's their right.
Then you're ready for Talk Back, a podcast where two fans debate the media narrative and discuss the world of sports as we see it.
Welcome to the show.
Welcome to this week's edition of Talk Back. It's episode 224. I'm one of your hosts, Eric Nesbit, and with me, as always, is Justin Gay, your host and director of content. He's got a full lineup of NFL in segment 1, then the NBA in segment 2. We're going to put NASCAR on hold for this week because the action at the track at Texas Motor Speedway wasn't all that exciting. You had the Stewart-Haas racing team and particularly Kevin Harvick dominate for the win, and that punches his ticket to the finals at Homestead. So now, as we know from last week, that Joey Logano is in there as well. Martin Truex Jr., there was no drama on the track this week, but him and Chase Elliott and Kyle Busch and some of the other favorites to go to the finals at Homestead are now with one race to go in Phoenix to figure out the final two that get in. So that might turn into a talk-worthy topic for next week if anything happens on the track there in Phoenix. All right, Justin, I'm looking forward to all the hot topics and the talk-worthy news that you have for us this week. You're going to have to bear with me a little bit. I have yet another cold. Kind of a tough thing, in and out of hospitals, and with the weather changing, I pick up things rather easily this time of year, so hopefully the listeners don't get too bothered by the coughs and raspy voice, but who knows, maybe I'm annoying to listen to on a weekly basis anyway, and you're the guy that they all come to see. So right after this, it's segment 1, All NFL.
We are back here on segment 1, and let's jump into the Week 9 NFL action. Eric, this was a slate of games that was overshadowed because of all the hype and all the promotional hype that really went into the Sunday night game, which involved the Green Bay Packers traveling to Foxborough to face the New England Patriots, and it was Brady versus Rodgers. It's the game to decide the GOAT, all this stuff that NBC put out there to really pump this game up. But I think the game of the week, and a game that turned into a pretty epic showdown, was actually the Saints and Rams that happened on Sunday afternoon. The Saints were up by 3 touchdowns in this game. The Rams stormed back to tie this game at 35. The Saints got a field goal and then hit the home run shot to Michael Thomas, 72 yards to go up by 10, and that's how they won 45-35. So the Rams fall from the ranks of the unbeaten. They were the last team without a loss. Now they have one. They had been the team that everybody had talked about that had pegged as maybe not only just the best team in the NFC, maybe the best team in the NFL, but the Saints got the victory by 10 over them. So, Eric, are the Saints now the best team in the NFC?
Justin, I've heard a lot of overreaction to this topic as we've started the week, and I've got to say that some of it is fair because we are overreacting a little bit. Not us, maybe particularly here in this studio, but in other studios. The Saints are a good team. There's no denying that. You predicted that in the preview shows before we started the season. I wasn't too sure on the Saints, but they have performed extremely well. So the Rams losing to the Saints doesn't change my opinion about the Rams one bit, especially with the fight that they showed when they were down a lot early. To me, this is very similar to what happened with Kansas City and New England a few weeks ago. Everyone was talking about the Kansas City Chiefs because they were undefeated. Then they took a hard loss against New England, although it was only a 3-point loss in a game where the Chiefs still scored 40. So I feel like there was overreaction to that. Oh, well, Brady just goes in, takes care of the Chiefs. The Chiefs really aren't anything. Well, they've won every game since then as well. The Rams have one loss. When did we start panicking in the NFL media over one loss? The Rams are still really good in the NFC. And guess what? The Saints are too. I'm not really panicking on this. I think it just sets up a fantastic showdown, maybe in the playoffs as we get through the season here.
You didn't lose any confidence in the Rams? You still feel like they're the team to beat in the NFC?
Team to beat? Yeah, sure. Losing one game in a season doesn't make you not the team to beat. And they lost to the Saints. It's not like they lost to Oakland. It's not like they lost to San Francisco or Arizona. They lost to New Orleans. They have one loss as well. So these are two very good football teams. I don't know that you can really make any determination on loss of confidence when you get beat by another powerhouse in the conference. And again, that's why I didn't panic on the Chiefs when they lost to the Patriots. If they had lost to the Colts or, again, the Browns, that's a different story. But to me, these don't shake my confidence when you're talking these levels of teams.
I want to say I'm there with you, but I feel like this game, I've talked about it before on the show. I'm in a big picks league that I do. I took the Saints in this game, and really came down for me was looking at the Rams' performance on the road. And I think that's where things get a little bit shaky. You saw them go into Seattle. They only won by 2. It took a 4th down play where Gurley, they actually went for it pretty deep in their own territory at that point and were able to get the 1st down and basically kneel it out. They went to Denver, couldn't hold a lead. They won by 3. They just seem to sort of struggle against better teams. Yeah, they've pounded the Raiders and they pounded the 49ers, but those teams are going to be drafting in the top 7, basically, of this upcoming draft. And we're going to talk about the Raiders later in this segment. So that's really what concerned me about the Rams just on the road, which is why I think that they have to somehow find a way to get to number 1 seed, because I don't know if they can go back in to New Orleans in that dome and beat Drew Brees in the playoffs. I would be very concerned about that. Just looking at Brees' stats in the dome, in any dome versus when he's outdoors, Eric, it's crazy. He's got 125 games where he's played in a dome. He has 77 wins and he's got 48 losses. He's 10 games better than he is outdoors. He's got 8,000 more passing yards and almost the same number of games. He's just a different quarterback, especially when he's at home in New Orleans. So I think that's what I took away from this game. If this game was in LA, we talked about the fact that they're struggling in that Coliseum to fill it with Rams fans. But even a 50-50 split for the Rams would be much better than having to go back to New Orleans and play in that dome. Get the Saints outdoors, get them on natural grass, just find any way they can to slow them down some. I think that was my main takeaway from this is I still like the Rams. I think they're a very good team. I think when it comes around in playoff time, the Rams are going to look like a different team. Hopefully for them, they'll have Talib back. Marcus Peters will be healed up. They just got Dante Fowler. He'll be more in tune with their defense and what they want to do and how he can affect them as a pass rusher. I think that will be a different looking Rams team. But Eric, I think for the Rams, they definitely cannot take their foot off the gas. They have to find a way to get that number 1 seed, because I did lose confidence that they can go on the road to New Orleans in a big playoff spot with Goff and win a game in New Orleans. That was my takeaway.
Yeah, Justin, I do feel like those are fair points. They were down a lot early, and they had to have that comeback to be in the game, and then they did end up losing by 10. They even gave up that, like you said, that big play at the end. So you don't like to see that kind of thing from a team that's trying to be a number 1 seed, but going undefeated in the NFL is a very hard thing to do. So again, I'm just not panicking at 8-1, but totally see where you're going with that. And I do actually agree with you that it would be very unbeneficial for them to go into the dome in New Orleans. That's probably the least hopeful path that they would have to getting to a Super Bowl. So yeah, they've got to avoid that at all costs if they can.
Well, once the Saints got up by 10, there was about 4 minutes to go. Michael Thomas, he gets the big touchdown, 72 yards on the pass from Breeze. And then Michael Thomas goes all Joe Horn. He goes right to the goalpost. If you know your Saints football or remember watching that game, you knew exactly what he was going to do. He pulled out the flip phone, and it turns out that he actually had a flip phone under each of the goalposts, under the padding, because he obviously didn't know what end zone he would potentially score in. So he had this pre-planned, but he used a prop, so that got him a 15-yard unsportsmanlike penalty. Head coach Sean Payton none too happy with Michael Thomas after the game, just saying he played a great game, but the penalty would be something that they would discuss. So, Eric, did you have a problem with Michael Thomas's flip phone celebration, or do you feel it was a selfish act?
When we get right down to it, I think you're going to find that it's a selfish act, and I think you're going to find that arguments for that are valid arguments. But me, personally, I don't have a problem with it, because I think with 4 minutes to go, you're up by 10. It's a 15-yard penalty. It doesn't necessarily give the other team an automatic score. But yeah, it's a team game. It's a selfish thing to do. But I look at it more from the NFL's perspective. They're allowing team celebrations now. They're allowing these players to do things that are a lot more entertaining why is it such a big deal to have a prop or a minor prop? Now, I guess it's a slippery slope, right? If you allow Sharpies like Terrell Owens or you allow phones like Joe Horn and now Michael Thomas, what does it turn into from there? Ezekiel Elliott jumped into a Salvation Army kettle. I don't know how that wasn't a prop. That was a prop. It didn't bother me, and it's entertaining. So, yeah, I get it. It's selfish, but you're up by 10. You're winning the game. I mean, take the punishment and enjoy it.
I didn't have a problem with it as a non-Saints fan, but if I was a coach on the Saints, if I was a fan of the Saints, yeah, I would have a little bit of a problem with it because you just saw the Rams come back from 21 down to tie you. You're up 10, but there's still 4 minutes on the clock on an offense that's shown themselves to be able to score very quickly. So, yeah, I felt at that moment, only up 10. It wasn't like he scored with 1 minute left and they were up 10 where, okay, 15 yards to pump up the crowd. Everybody's going crazy. But it's selfish because before this year, unless you were into fantasy football, most people didn't know who Michael Thomas was. Now he's kind of put himself on the map, and he did it basically to the detriment of the team or to the potential detriment of the team. Now, they still won by 10, but why even put yourself in that position is my point. I think to your point, if the NFL, they've relaxed some things on celebration, I don't see what he did was really any different than the team celebrations. I really didn't have a problem with that. I don't know why the NFL doesn't allow some of those type of things because we're in a world where that kind of stuff, when it goes viral, it's going to get fans, especially young fans, viewing it. And you're just going to drive more people to your content. I mean, how many times has people watched something like the Beckham catch and some of the things that he does, those things go viral. So when you have celebrations that these guys could get creative with and they don't have to just go back through and rehash things from 10, 15, 20 years ago, they can kind of do some more creative stuff. That stuff's going to go viral, and I feel like it's going to help the league. And as a defensive player, if you get a pick six, if you get a sack, you can dance, you can do your stuff. So it's not like just the offensive players are the only ones that can do it. They're going to provoke something. The defense could do it as well. The guys from the other team can do it. So I feel like there's some things the NFL could relax there that would just benefit the league, in my opinion.
It's a little bit different scenario because the game was over, but it's similar to what Kevin Harvick did in the sense that when he won the race at Texas, he parked his car near the start-finish line. The NASCAR officials had the gate open. Harvick actually brought a young fan out onto the track. And one of the coolest celebrations I really have ever seen in NASCAR, he held up a phone and took a selfie of himself and the young fan and then gave the phone back to, the fan and his dad and everything. And then he even gave him the checkered flag. That is using props to do a celebration. Now, I realize the race is over at that point, but he's taking extra time that is cutting into TV time and media time and interview time and things like that. So what if NASCAR turns around and says, you know what, keep your celebrations down to a minimum, 30 seconds or a minute. We used to have Carl Edwards do backflips off the car. You've got Kyle Busch who does the bow with the checkered flag. You've got Brad Keselowski who drives around with the American flag. You've got these great celebrations. The selfie that Kevin Harvick did, I thought was really cool. It's like you're saying, that type of stuff drives content to websites and Twitter and everything else that helps the sport grow. So why take that kind of stuff away if it's not really hurting anything? His celebration time, Michael Thomas I'm speaking of, was not lengthier than a team celebration. It took the same amount, if not less time. And these guys are using the football as a prop all the time. So a little cell phone in the goalpost, a little Sharpie marker here or there, not a big deal. I think it's a slippery slope effect. I think what the NFL is afraid of is today it's a cell phone, tomorrow it's a Sharpie. What is it next week? How do we legislate the avalanche that goes with that? So I think that's probably the basis of the rule.
Yeah, you're probably right there on that. They're probably trying to protect the players from being their own worst enemy at that point, trying not to go over the edge. But it feels like if they loosely said, just don't do stuff that's offensive. Don't do what Isaiah Crowell did. Don't do what Moss did. Don't do that kind of dumb stuff. Odell Beckham had one last year where he was peeing like a dog in an end zone or something. Like, just don't be an idiot. Don't do stupid stuff like that. Have fun. Be creative. Get yourself out there. The ability to market yourself. Just don't take it over the top. And if you do, then they should have a harsher penalty for it. So guys that want to have that opportunity, remember, NFL's different than the NBA. These guys have their helmets on all the time. Half the time, fans don't even know who guys are. I bet if you put Michael Thomas up, 6 out of 10 NFL fans couldn't even name him. I think there's some things the NFL could do, but you're right. They probably are trying to protect the players from themselves. So let's talk about that Sunday Night Football, the big matchup between Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers. It looked like we were en route to an epic finish. This game was 17-17. Green Bay was driving. Aaron Jones has the critical fumble at that point, and New England was able to capitalize with 2 more touchdowns, one of them being one of the more creative trick plays you'll see